Hold on tight and fasten your seatbelts. It's time for the fastest show in motorsports to take the green flag. Once again, good evening, race fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Motorsports Madness, the fastest racing show on the web. Here tonight from Speed77 Studios in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm Jacob Seelman, the voice of Speed77 Radio, here at tonight's roundtable, along with my cohort in crime at every roundtable session we have here at Speed77, Tom Baker, and the rest of our cast of Motorsports Insiders, James Pike at the round table, Kyle Magda, and DJ Everett going to talk a couple of different topics with us here, and we'll have more of our cast of characters joining us a little bit later. But, Tom, I'll start with you. Certainly a lot of interesting topics coming to the forefront today, and a lot of things breaking loose over the course of the weekend as well. But you know what I was surprised about? The fact that I was actually able to sleep through most of a Richmond race and not miss anything.
Yeah, well, on Friday night, you could have slept through the entire Richmond race and not missed anything, and at least not as far as a pass for the lead. There wasn't one. And Saturday, there was barely one. I mean, I have never seen two Richmond races play out with less challenge for the win than what we saw over the weekend. And I kind of get Friday night because the 54 car seems superior everywhere it goes, or at least one of the top two or three superior cars everywhere it goes. So I kind of get how Kyle Busch could pull that off on Friday night. But on Saturday night, for Brad Keselowski to be that dominant in a cup race with chase spots on the line, that was a really strange race. There was far less drama, far less action than I would have expected.
There really was, and I think everybody was shocked, and I'm hearing a lot of people chalk it up to the tire just because Goodyear brought the same compound as they did last year for this race, and the high line was there, but Kyle Magda, as we all saw, the high line was the only line, and it wasn't just high, it was 2 inches off the wall high, and nobody could go to the bottom to even try and make that dive bomb pass. It just didn't exist on Saturday night.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with that. You know, usually Richmond has multiple lanes to race on, but, you know, I was kind of disappointed with the races this weekend. Thought there would be a little more action on Saturday, especially like Tom was saying with the last race in the chase. But, you know, I know on Friday, and I know Kyle Busch led every lap, and then I think NASCAR found a rear gear, which they'll probably figure out tomorrow or Wednesday what happens with that. So I was kind of disappointed. I thought the race would be a little more exciting. You know, like you said, Kevin Harvick was pretty much the only driver in both nights to make the high line even work. And, you know, it appeared that on some of the longer runs, he had a good car in both races. And I think he had a shot on it on Friday night, and just caution came out, and it fell right into Kyle Busch's hands. So I think with the drama, I know Jamie McMurray was up there most of the night, Clint Boyer, some of those drivers, but in the end, you know, Brad Keselowski just put a whooping on them. I mean, Jeff Gordon probably had a somewhat equal car, but Brad Keselowski just put on a clinic on Saturday night. So you didn't really miss much, but I'm really interested to see what happens in this week into the chase with Chicagoland. So we'll see what happens from there on out.
Yeah, for all the drama we lacked this weekend, I think we're going to make up for it this coming weekend at Chicago. Tom, I want to turn back to you for a minute because we've set the chase grid now, and we had a 5-way tie at the top for the longest time, and we thought it was going to be a driver winning their way in to make the chase, and instead it was a driver winning their way to the number one seed and breaking that deadlock at the top. How telling and how much can we read into Brad Keselowski's dominance at Richmond on Saturday as to what this could tell for the next 10 races?
Oh, I don't think we can read too much into it other than to say that there's no question about the fact that Penske Racing has got two cars that clearly could contend for the title. I don't see this as, I don't think you can read this as Brad Keselowski is going to dominate the chase and win the championship because he has more wins than anybody else and he stomped everybody at Richmond on Saturday. I don't think we can read that much into it, but he certainly threw down a gauntlet, and I think it clearly says that Penske Racing is going to be tough to contend with in this championship chase, but there's a bunch of Hendrick cars and some other cars in there that are going to have a lot to say about it too, James Pike.
Yeah, no, the thing, I look at Brad's 4 wins this season. You look at the stats. Las Vegas, started second on the grid, won the race, had the best car in the final stint, was not overly dominant, but had the car when it mattered. Kentucky, won the race from the pole, led almost 200 laps. New Hampshire, started 7th, led 138 laps of the 301, or 305 rather, if you consider the green, white checkers, but point still there. Clearly the dominant car there, and then obviously this weekend, 388 of the 400. I don't know if he's going to dominate every race in the chase, but I think that if Brad wins races in the chase, it would not surprise me to see him do it in dominant fashion. The question will be whether or not he can do that multiple times over the course of the next 10 races, Jacob.
And see, that's going to be the key, because I don't think it's just going to take one win here. I think it's going to take multiple wins like we've seen from Jimmy Johnson or even a Tony Stewart over the last couple of years. I think it's going to take 2, preferably 3 wins maybe during this chase if you want to go into Homestead knowing that you're there, knowing you have a shot, because obviously we've got the win and you advance format, which I think is going to make things really, really interesting, Kyle Magda, especially when you consider that one of the advance races or one of the cutoff races is Talladega.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's such a wild card and a crapshoot. I mean, anything could happen in that race, but, you know, I think that stretch, that 3-race stretch, you know, going from Kansas to Talladega, I think these drivers are going to try all they can to get a win in those races, so Talladega won't be an issue, because I know with this new format, with a new format, that when you win a race in that span, you pretty much you automatically move on to the next round, and I think that's definitely an incentive for the drivers. So, I mean, if I were a driver, I want to be going into Talladega with no worries at all, just knowing that I'm going to be in the next round. So I think that definitely throws a curveball. And also another race is Dover, also for the cutoff. That Dover can throw you a curveball as well. I mean, you can run multiple lanes there, but it's going to be interesting. You know, even though Jimmy Johnson is pretty much it's been his place the last 2 years, I'm still interested to see what'll happen, because I don't know. I mean, especially this first week at Chicagoland. I mean, they have to. I mean, the driver that wins this race, I mean, they're already going to be moving on. And that's how much implications with this new chase system has. So I'm still a little reluctant about the finale with the 4 drivers going at it, but I'm going to see how it goes along here in these next 10 races.
It's going to be fun to see. Okay, Tom, we've talked about winning and chasing and all that thing, but there was one other thing of note that I'm intrigued of talking about, and, you know, more so because it was just one of those moments where you just sat in front of your TV, shook your head, and I personally didn't even know what on earth to say. We had a caution at lap 330 because NASCAR had to call security for a guy on top of the catch fence. I've literally seen it all now.
Well, last year, if you'll recall, we had Spingate at Richmond. This year, we have Fencegate. You take in the way that sets up is you take a complete Coach Tom donkey of the day and you fill him full of alcohol on his birthday, and he decides that he's going to just get himself on TV. And that's really what you had, is you had a donkey who got drunk and decided it was his birthday, so he wanted to be on TV, and he got on TV. I'm hoping that the next place he went didn't have a TV. It just had a nice set of bars and a small toilet and a very uncomfortable bed. Because quite frankly, the problem with something like this is we all laugh at it, we all think it's funny, but the truth is, all it would have taken is for him to fall onto the racetrack, fall through the fence, somebody hit the fence near where he was sitting on top of that part of it and have the impact rattle him off, some sort of a tragedy, and we could be talking about a much different story. This person should be banned from all motorsports for the rest of his life, whether it's short track, NASCAR, or whatever. There's just no excuse for that type of behavior, and there's nothing funny about it.
No, there's nothing funny about it, and that's the sad thing is that we're really lucky in essence that it wasn't far worse than it was. Wow, the grammar bugs bit me today. So, with all that being said, I'm going to try and get my tongue straightened around, apparently, and we're going to take care of some business here on Motorsports Madness. Take our first break. We'll be back right after this. We've got more motorsports content to talk about. You are listening to Motorsports Madness on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. We'll be back.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit StockCarSteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
Packers,
Vikings,
Red State,
Blue State.
We come from different places.
Uptown,
Downtown.
We come to different conclusions.
half empty,
Half full.
But no matter how different we are, we're all connected, and we can all make a difference. That's why United Way brings people, expertise, and resources together to improve the education, income, and health of our communities, the building blocks for a better life. When we live united, our efforts, magnified by others, add up to real change. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly, so do our communities. But real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So let's look beyond our differences.
Live united.
One by one, let's make a difference. Let's reach out a hand to one and influence the condition of all.
Live united.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman and Tom Baker, along with our entire cast of Motorsports Insiders on the air tonight. And we've got a lot more content to talk about, and still 3 driver interviews coming up a little later on in the show. And if you want to call and talk motorsports with us, you can do just that by calling 347-989-0783. That's 347-989-0783. Call in and tell us what's on your mind from this weekend of motorsports. And it's going to be a whole lot of fun, and certainly it's been interesting, Tom. Let's see. We've had somebody climb a fence. We've had 2 guys win in such dominant fashion. I've been trying to find interesting stories, and I found one, and just as I say your name, I'm actually going to turn to DJ Everett first, because this one is one that he's riled up about, and I'm riled up about, and Tom, you'll be riled up about, I'm sure, a little bit later. But DJ, I'm a little cross with this one. I'm going to be honest, because you and I follow dirt probably better than just about anybody except maybe Steve Ovens, who I'm sure will be in with us a little later here at the round table. But for all our dirt conversations, you've been scouting Chris Bell for, I don't know, about the last 6 years, ever since he was shorter than you. And now we've seen Chris do everything from USAC to win a World of Outlaws race to win a Power I Midget World Championship. And Saturday night we saw him do something that he's never done before, and like I said, I'm a little cross about it. He's gone to the dark side. He made his asphalt late model debut at Hickory Motor Speedway over the weekend with Kyle Busch Motorsports. Now, the tie-in to this is kind of simple. Toyota offered him the seat because they power his Keith Coons midget rides when he runs the midget on dirt. But you and I have been talking about it, DJ. I can't help but think that this is going to get a little bit more interesting because, as you mentioned to me just the other day when this first broke, it's all about the money.
Yeah, and Jacob, I'd be lying to tell you that if, we didn't see this coming from this kid, we probably would look pretty stupid. But, we back in the day, we've seen some open-wheel guys such as A.J. Foyt, the Unsers, even Al Unser Jr., Parnella Jones, go over to what we call today the dark side, which is NASCAR, stock car racing. But what really paved the way was a young kid out of Vallejo, California, via Pittsburgh, Indiana, by the name of Jeff Gordon back in the early 90s that really paved the way for some midget and sprint car guys to get into NASCAR racing. And ever since then, we've seen, Ryan Newman, Mike Bliss, the late Jason Leffler, and have some, medium to very successul stats in NASCAR racing. The present-day guys of Kyle Larson, and now we're looking at Christopher Bell. That's going to be moving, looks like, over to the dark side, as we call it. As much as we call it the dark side, Jake, because, you and I, we love our dirt track sprint car guys, and as much as we hate to see them leave that genre of racing, yet it's somewhat understandable since we talk about this 800-pound gorilla that we call NASCAR racing that everybody wants to try to get involved in, whether you're a sprint car guy, midget guy, a road course guy, IndyCar guy. So, yeah, it's kind of sad to see him leave what we love, but in some ways it's kind of nice to see him going for something that could possibly put him on top of the world.
Guys, do we know my impression of this, and maybe I've misunderstood what I've seen and read, but it seemed to me this was kind of a one-off, almost random kind of thing. Do we know something that I don't know? As far as has it been expressed that this is leading somewhere? Because I've understood that in the past that Chris has basically said that he's really not necessarily in any big hurry to do anything other than sprint cars. He was very happy, as if I'm thinking in my mind maybe he's the next Steve Kinzer or the next Sammy Swindell. What do we know in terms of this being more than just an opportunity in a late model?
According to all the information I've gathered, and I want to give a shout-out to one of our other media colleagues, Adam Fenwick actually hooked me up with some of the official details today from over at National Speed Sport. But from everything that Adam has said to me about how this deal came about, they're not sure exactly when the next start is going to be, but that there will be a handful, plural, of starts before the end of the season with KBM, that when he gets back in a late model, it will be with KBM. That's at Toyota's discretion there, according to what Adam has passed along to me, and that they're very intrigued. He finished third in the first race at Hickory. They did twin races over the weekend, and Chris finished third, fell out of the second race with a mechanical failure, but he showed a lot of promise really quickly, and I'm hearing rumblings. I know he's staying in Charlotte for at least a couple of weeks, Tom. So I'm not convinced that this, based on all the information we have right now, isn't the first in a series of something bigger, especially if Toyota is directly involved with this. I think DJ brings up an interesting point. We could see Chris fairly quickly if it's what the sponsors want to try and do with him and he shows the progress. We could see Chris Bell on the fast track, kind of like Jeff Gordon back in 1990.
Well, that would be interesting, and thinking about the situation that he's obviously in with Kyle Busch Motorsports. You have late models, you have trucks, and you have nationwide cars and Sprint Cup cars with Joe Gibbs Racing. So certainly there is plenty of equipment, and there could just as easily be, I would assume, there could just as easily be some K&N starts if need be out of one shop or another over there. So you would think that if there is a plan for Chris, and if this isn't just something that he wanted to try or something that someone offered him to try and he said, sure, why not? I mean, if there's genuine interest in him going to pavement, you would have to think that there are already conversations about next steps being had and strategies and timelines being put in place. That's all very interesting. I just was not aware of anything other than this one start. And DJ, you really you made a good point. It's all about the money, and that's kind of sad, really, because I would have thought that Christopher Bell, I would like to see the driver, some of these younger drivers that come up through the dirt sprint car ranks stay there so that we could possibly have some future Sammy Swindell, some future Steve Kinzers. The Outlaws need a good infusion of younger talent, DJ, and if every time they get to the point where Christopher Bell's at, they make a right-hand turn and come east and race in NASCAR, then it's going to be hard to envision where the top outlaw talent comes from in the next 5 to 10 years. What do you think about that, DJ?
Tom, and you're right, Tom, because I would love to see a lot of these guys just stay in sprint car racing and midget racing and stuff like that. But the reality of it is, ever since NASCAR got so big, a multi-million, billion-dollar business where these drivers now are earning 7 digits, sometimes some drivers earning 8-digit figures. The reality of it is, you show these guys the cash, and that's where they're going to end up most likely. And that's the sad part about it from my perspective, because I would love to see these guys stay. I would have loved to see Kyle Larson stay where he was at in open-wheel dirt track racing, as well as Christopher Bell. But yeah, you show the money to these guys, and they're gonna jump after it. So that's been pretty much what's been going on ever since Jeff Gordon paved the way since in the early 90s, and just about every darn open-wheel dirt guy, open-wheel pavement guy that has some decent talent has been going towards that route, which is the 800-pound gorilla we call NASCAR.
Yeah, and see, this is where the speculation, I think, is going to run rampant for the next couple of weeks. And, as we see Chris potentially make a few more starts, I think it's really going to be very telling of where he could go with this. I think there's potential there. Obviously, he showed it finishing on the podium in his first late model race, but we'll just have to see where it goes. While I'm thinking about Hickory, I want to give a shout-out to William Byron, who did grab a first career late model win at the racetrack over the weekend. Actually, that first race where Chris finished third, as a matter of fact, and going to have a quick soundbite with him on Thursday night's Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports show. So stay on the lookout for that. So, Tom, really quickly before we head to our bottom of the hour commercial, thinking about a couple of things here. Obviously, we've talked a lot of NASCAR. We've talked some NASCAR side stories involving KBM, and one of the other stories that I'm hearing swirling potentially is the rumor of crew chief changes over at JGR for 2015. Obviously, they're bringing Carl Edwards into the fold. They need to find somebody to go on top of the box there, but not a lot of good has gone on at JGR this season really at all since Denny Hamlin's win at Talladega in May. Is it time? I know Joe Gibbs doesn't like to make crew chief changes, but is it time to shake something up and try to make something happen before this just completely stalls out and we start getting back to nothingville with that team?
Well, I don't think any of us can sit here in our media chairs and profess to understand everything that is going on over at JGR and where to point the finger if there needs to be that. But I think it would probably be fair to say that when you bring in a driver such as Carl Edwards, that this would be the time to shake things up if you're going to. Certainly Carl's going to want somebody he feels comfortable with. This is really, it comes down to chemistry. I would think that the opportunity is definitely there, and I think the scenario is there to move some people around. Now, who they move around, who knows? We've heard all kinds of rumors. We've heard Kyle's crew chief, Dave Rogers, going over to Carl. I actually heard yesterday morning that, in fact, it might be Denny's crew chief going over to Carl. But they've got some strong people in that organization who could just as easily step up to a crew chief role, though I wouldn't think that you would want to put a first-time Cup crew chief with a driver like Carl. So, yeah, I think that I don't want to blame the crew chiefs for what's going on at JGR, but I certainly would think it would be fair to say that the scenario now with the four-team incoming, I think it's fair to say that this would be as good a time to make some changes as any, and Carl's going to need somebody. So, I definitely think that would be a real possibility that we could see, similar to what Hendrick has done over the years, just moving some players around and, trying to affect something different in the way of performance and results.
Fair enough. And with that, we're going to take our bottom of the hour caution flag. When we come back, we talk open wheel and talk a little bit of everything. We'll pull out the wine and cheese to see if we can't lure Joel Sebastianelli out of hiding from down in Gatorland. And race fans, if you want to talk motorsports with us, you still can. Just give us a call, 347-989-0783, and we'll talk motorsports with you. Again, that's 347-989-0783. You are listening to Motorsports Madness on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. We will be back right after this.
Race Chaser Online and Speed77 Radio has gone live. All three of the Race Chaser Online Speed77 Radio branded podcasts can now be found live on blogtalkradio.com. Look for Motorsports Madness Monday nights at 7 p.m., hosted by Jacob Seelman and Tom Baker, along with all of their cast of characters, covering everything from NASCAR, IndyCar, F1, Super Dirt Car Series Modifieds, World of Outlaws, Sprint Cars, V8 Supercars, and everything in between. That's Motorsports Madness, Monday nights at 7 p.m. Then on Tuesday nights, it's time to talk New York Dirt with Turn 5 Live, hosted by Steve Ovens, Clint Miller, and Brad Ovens. They talk everything from the local scene in the Finger Lakes to the national dirt racing news. That's Turn 5 Live, Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. on blogtalkradio.com/Turn5Live. Then on Thursday nights, it's time to go full fendered action with the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, Thursday nights at 7 p.m., hosted by Tom Baker, Jacob Seelman, and Kyle Souza. That's the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Go to blogtalkradio.com/racechaseronline, and for all of the news, views, and driver interviews, go to www.racechaseronline.com.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Okay, so I've prepared the tablecloths and the silver platters, and we've got the wine and cheese out because there's just really no other way to do this. But Open Wheel Central right now on Motorsports Madness, and of course we have to enlist the help of our resident wine and cheese experts, and foreign food seems to be your specialty lately, Joel Sebastianelli. You've had an interesting weekend keeping up with the F1 world, but I must congratulate you, sir, right on cue and right on target, as a matter of fact, because as you predicted, Lewis Hamilton over Nico Rosberg in Italy, although what I was surprised about was the fact that it wasn't Lewis blowing the side pods off of everybody. Instead, it looks like Hamilton might actually be starting to get inside Nico Rosberg's head just a little bit.
I think so, too. After Belgium, the talk was that Nico Rosberg was inside Lewis Hamilton's head, although I would argue that, especially seeing what happened this weekend, Nico never would have pulled that move in Belgium if he had that mental edge to begin with. So Lewis Hamilton may very well be the man who's the most mentally poised one in this battle. I think to a certain extent, he doesn't really have anything to lose. He has already won a title, and he's coming from behind. So, yes, you could literally lose the championship, but he's not going to lose it in the same way that Nico Rosberg is. Pressure is on Nico Rosberg to keep winning and keep competing, not on Lewis Hamilton. It was a great victory for Lewis Hamilton in a race that Nico Rosberg very well could have won. Hamilton dropped back to fourth position on the first lap, had a very poor, almost Mark Webber-esque start. Problems with the energy recovery system, but two unforced errors in turn one. Nico Rosberg overshooting the corner not once but twice, really threw away a race that could have been his, could have upped that points lead even more. Now it's down to just a one-race advantage that he's got. Any sort of mechanical troubles that he hasn't seemed to be plagued with yet. Any poor results on the track. If Nico Rosberg doesn't keep up, at least staying on the podium, that lead could evaporate very quickly. So Lewis Hamilton is certainly alive and well in the title chase.
He really is, and I think it's made very, very interesting by the fact that he's starting to creep back up into this, and now that it seems like at least for a week those two have been able to put some of their differences behind them and work together, they extend the constructors' lead again, Joel, and I know that's not what Red Bull needed, but honestly, for all the things that we saw with Red Bull out of the last couple of weekends, they just looked completely mediocre at Monza this weekend.
For Red Bull, it's been a back and forth of sorts throughout much of the season. The problem is their car doesn't suit every track type. You look at the Mercedes, look at the RB7, the RBF, all these great Red Bull cars they've had, and some of the great cars throughout F1 history. They race well anywhere. But Red Bull hasn't had that luxury. They've had a rough go at things. I think in Singapore, it's a track that they traditionally run very well on, and that sort of street circuit may suit them well again. But they haven't been able to find that perfect balance wherever they go. And to be fair, they finished 5th and 6th with Daniel Ricciardo leading Sebastian Vettel. Once again, another surprise result for the Aussie. So I don't think you can say it was a poor weekend. They only finished behind two teams, but it's still not the type of weekend that you're looking for. Heading to Singapore, it's a track they've won 3 consecutive races on, all 3 with Sebastian Vettel. So as we head there in 2 weeks, I think Red Bull is going to have their eyes certainly on a podium. Perhaps they'll need a little bit of help to get any more than that with the way the Mercedes is run, but they need some sort of stability, and they just haven't been able to find it with this year's car.
No, they haven't, and that's going to be something that I'm going to keep watching, not even necessarily for the rest of this season, Joel, but I think now starting to look towards 2015, I think if you're Red Bull, you've got to start preparing yourselves. There's no chance you can come back to win the Constructors' Cup this year. I think as much as you focus on trying to win, get back in contention for a decent finish for 2014, you have to start looking at 2015 as the rebound, and obviously a lot of rumors going around as far as driver lineups for 2015, and some rumors coming out of the paddock this weekend too at Monza, Joel, about the possibility of only 8 teams contesting the championship next year, the potential of some teams having 3 drivers. It's just bizarre what's going on over in F1 world right now, and I'm curious what you've heard and what you might think about some of the potential changes.
Well, Bernie Eccleston has said for quite a while, almost a little bit outspoken about it, if you will, that if Formula One was to drop the number of teams and increase by 1 car in this scenario, going to 8 teams and each of those teams fielding 3 cars, that it would actually be better for F1. And to a certain extent, as far as competition goes, I'm inclined to agree with him. But I think moving to less teams is still also bad for Formula One. I don't know how much validity there is to what Adam Parr said. He said on Twitter, quote, "This is the last year of F1 as we know it. In 2015, 8 teams will contest the championship, with several teams entering 3 cars." A lot of it's speculation, but we've had this discussion on this show before. What would you prefer, just simply as a race fan? And I am actually asking you, especially Tom, because I would love to hear his take on this again. Is it better to have 11 teams or 12 teams with only 3 teams that really have a shot at victory and the rest of the teams just functioning as moving chicanes in the back of the field like Marussia and Caterham? Or is it better to have a lower number of teams, let's say 8, but more drivers? That means an extra driver in Ferrari, an extra driver in a Mercedes, an extra driver in a Red Bull, a Williams. It's ultimately more cars and more drivers who are going to be contesting for a win than in the current model. So I think both would actually have their pros and cons, and certainly there's been a ton of change in Formula One. I think F1 as we know it has already completely changed with the new power systems and switching to V6, all the moves they made in the offseason that have completely brutally murdered the sound of Formula One and some of the things that made Formula One so beautiful. But, of course, we've gotten used to that change already, and you don't hear people talking much about it because after a while you adjust. So is it a bad thing for Formula One? I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, but I don't know if it's a bad thing either. I think we need a lot more than just one tweet and Bernie Ecclestone running his mouth before we really commit ourselves to the fact that it's a strong possibility.
I don't know, Joel. For my 2 cents, I never like to see less. I never like to see less teams. I think if it gets to a point where we think that less teams equals better racing. In other words, if there are only 8 that are even capable of racing for a championship with any quality, then I think we've made a statement about cost versus the return of F1. And I think we've pretty much. I think at that point it becomes a franchise situation where you're just going to lose the rest of the lower buck teams eventually, and that 8-team deal is all you're going to have. You're going to have 8 teams of 3, and that's what it's going to be. And I guess if that's what everybody wants, it's fine. But it's not the kind of racing I like to see, and it's not. I don't think it's a good indicator of the success of Formula One right now. I think it's time to take a look at ways to bring more teams up to championship caliber rather than Bernie's, typical arrogant, could care less about the little guy scenario of, well, we'll just get rid of all the scrubs and add one more car to the rich folk and go at it that way. That's never a formula for bringing new people into the sport and new fans and whatever. Less is not ever more in racing. That's my 2 cents.
And I agree with most of what you said, particularly when it comes to the franchising aspect. And I don't think that's good, but you're one of the first ones, and it's not just you. It's a lot of fans in America in particular who the biggest knock about Formula One, you hear people whine about the lack of parity every week. If nothing else, this is certainly going to give you better parity. I mean, so I don't think you can really argue from that standpoint that maybe from a competition aspect, I would say it's definitely better. But why lock in the number of teams? It's all about cost cutting. There's a lot of cost cutting that has to happen, and cost cutting isn't easy because you're not going to make people happy that way. You may make the teams happy, but so many of the changes we've seen heading into this year are ultimately in the name of cost cutting. Cost cutting, in short, is going to annoy the fans. People aren't going to like that. I can't think of any cost cutting measures that are really going to make people happy other than the people running the teams and signing the checks. So you have to cut costs. But if there's a team out there who, let's say they can't run a full Formula One season, but they'd like to contest Monaco or, maybe a couple of select races, I don't really see the drawback in saying, if a team doesn't want to run the entire season in Formula One, as long as you've got that set number or perhaps a promise in the future to run more and lock them in for a certain amount of time, I don't have a problem with even adding partial teams, teams who are only going to run a small part of the schedule every year. Like you see some IndyCar teams, for example, who will run the month of May at Indianapolis and a couple select races, but nowhere else. I don't see the drawback in that either. I think getting away from franchising is ultimately a good thing for Formula One, as opposed to going straight into this franchising aspect where it's just the same 8 teams and you're completely eliminating I want to say the underdog, the small guy, because certainly if you're competing in Formula One, there's no such thing as a real true underdog with the money you have coming in, but you're taking so many people and so many teams out of the equation, and you're losing a lot of the history. Frank Williams started with a very small team, only running a few races a year in an old model, in an old car that had been run the season before. So you're losing all of that, and I think that's the real drawback, and it's why I don't see it happening right away. There's no way it could happen right away. But will it in the future? We'll see. I think it's a little bit of an overreaction simply to one man's tweet without any real confirmed reports or anything like that, because we've only heard 2 people talk about this. Bernie has quite randomly brought it up in interviews at times, as he seems to do with most of the things that are on his mind, or in just this one tweet. So is that really enough for us to sit here and speculate about the future of Formula One? I certainly don't think so, but there will be plenty of changes in the next decade, maybe more changes than we've ever seen in Formula One. And if that's one of them, like anything else, it's got its pros and its cons.
And I think that's just going to be what we have to wait to play out is the pros and the cons right here, Joel, like you talk about. Really quickly, I want to get Ryan and Joel involved on this last point before we go to commercial. And, Ryan, I tell you, you've got a tough act to follow, but I want to shift gears to IndyCar for just a couple of seconds here before we head to commercial. And we talked a little bit with Joel last week about some of the instability and uncertainty for next year's IndyCar schedule. A lot of rumors going around. Obviously, we gain New Orleans Motorsports Park, but international expansion still an issue. Toronto could still be an issue. Several things to work out here. Where do you see this going now as we continue into 2015? We've got 7 months to wait.
Well, IndyCar, as Bo Barfield has resigned from his position, he's going to move on to the sports car series, doing their race directing. But basically, from the 18 races this year, there were 6 ovals, 6 road courses, 6 street courses. There will not be any Houston races next year, so that's 2 street courses taken away. They added NOLA Motorsports Park. That'll be April 10th through the 12th. I believe that will be a doubleheader. I would think it would be. Then again, it could be something like a Mid-Ohio where you see all 3 days, but you only see 1 race. Full schedule has yet to be released. We think that's going to be another couple of months like it normally is. But, Joel, I kind of have a question for you. Going back to what you talked about with F1, with fewer teams we saw United Fiber and Data, James Hinchcliffe's big sponsor. Obviously, James Hinchcliffe and Simon Pagino are kind of both free agents. Are going to kind of possibly switch teams, really. UFD said that they are in. Who do you think could could fill that role with United Fiber and Data and possibly have UFD sponsor a race?
It's really tough to say until we get closer, because particularly when it comes to sponsorship, these things are very tight-lipped. A driver's thinking about going someplace else, or even if he isn't thinking about it, the media can write up all sorts of stories. Somebody said this, somebody said that, but anything that's money-related is kept so tightly under wraps. They don't like to be open about that. Even, in particular, I talked to Connor Daly at St. Petersburg, and he was very open about seeking sponsorship and talking about sponsors, but with anything, because nothing was signed, he could not divulge any information on any backers that he had really at all. He wouldn't give any specifics about that sort of thing because those things are under such tight knit. With James Hinchcliffe, he's the most marketable guy in the IndyCar series, I think. Joseph Newgarden is certainly right up there. I don't know what the drawback is to sponsoring James Hinchcliffe. If I'm a sponsor, particularly one who wants to get involved in IndyCar and isn't in there already, why would you not look at Hinch? Hinch is a great ambassador for IndyCar. He's got that relatable feel to him. He's not above it all. He's not snarky at all. He's got a great attitude. He's funny. He's relatively good-looking, which is why I think GoDaddy really underutilized him when they had him. The stuff they could have done with Danica and James Hinchcliffe together, promotionally speaking, would have been fantastic. But one of the biggest problems in IndyCar seems to be that even when these sponsors come in, they're underutilized. You don't see sponsorship anywhere other than the car. For Target, they've sponsored Scott Dixon and Tony Kanaan, but have you ever walked into a Target and seen anything with Scott Dixon and Tony Kanaan? So I think if these sponsors are going to invest, at least UFD, you see the UFD girls. They're probably the most prominent anywhere in the IndyCar paddock last year of anyone who sponsored an individual car. So I think there's a lot of questions about United Fiber and Data, and I'm not going to answer that question simply because I have no way of doing so without being on the inside, and so much can change. I'd rather not speculate too much on that. But unfortunately for IndyCar, teams who sponsor Formula One, they seem to have sponsorship down great, but IndyCar is not great at marketing itself, and unfortunately sponsors in IndyCar aren't great at marketing their product and marketing their driver either, which creates problems for everybody, including some of the problems we're seeing this offseason with guys trying to find rides, keep rides, and just keep having that money in their pocket.
And it's, as DJ said earlier, and we talk about it in NASCAR, we talk about it in F1, it's all about the money. And we appreciate Joel and Ryan coming in for Open Wheel Central. We're going to pause for station identification. Coming up, we talk to ARCA driver Kyle Weatherman live here next as he gets ready to head to Salem, and it's going to be a little different for him. He is going to be racing his brother for the first time since Legends Cars, and we'll get his take on his ARCA season and a whole lot more right after this. Stay tuned.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Steelman, Tom Baker, along with our entire cast of characters here on Motorsports Madness on Monday night, and we roll from Open Wheel Central now right over to full-fendered action again as we talk a little bit of ARCA content here on tonight's show and bring in ARCA Racing Series. I don't want to call him a veteran just yet because he's not run a full season, but he's certainly run more than his fair share of ARCA starts so far. Kyle Weatherman, who is set to tackle the High Banks at Salem Speedway this weekend, has run multiple races this year for the Rouleau brothers. Kyle, we've had you on the show a couple times. First off, glad to welcome you back to the program, and definitely going to be interesting to see how you play in at Salem this weekend, because I know it's one of the tracks that you really like going to on the ARCA circuit.
Yeah, I definitely rank this probably first or second for sure. I liked Iowa last year. That was fun, and we had a good run there, and then we had a good run at Salem here in the fall. So I'm getting excited. Still got a couple more days until the race. Still got time to prepare and everything. Actually at the shop now, getting everything worked on and getting ready. So it's a lot of work goes into this thing. So it's definitely long nights and long mornings and everything. So getting ready now.
What's been the challenge for you this season, Kyle? I know obviously not been able to quite run a full schedule yet, but have tackled a lot of different tracks. What's the challenge been for you so far in 2014?
Really, this is a new team I'm with, Rulo Brothers and Rush Racing. So kind of, getting to know everybody here, getting our bearings straight with these guys, and hopefully this is our second time back. In the spring we went with Salem with the Rulo Brothers. Now it's our second time, so hopefully we learned something from last time and can put it to good use, and hopefully have a good, decent finish out of there, and have some fun for sure.
Well, just looking at this situation, you running against your brother, we hear a lot in sports about this type of thing. Peyton Manning playing Eli Manning, or in the stick and ball sports, it seems to be a little bit more prevalent. You don't see a whole lot of it in racing at the higher levels because, of course, it's hard to get one of you to that level, let alone two of you. Have you guys really talked at all about sort of strategy? Have you been coaching him already? I mean, tell us a little bit about how that's going to work just within the confines of the family dinner table.
Oh, yeah. Any question he has or anything, I'll answer for sure. We're really close and everything, so it's actually pretty fun because like you said, obviously we're not near to NASCAR level yet, but we're both climbing steadily, and and that's what it takes. So now we just gotta show off what we can do, and so far we've been doing it. Had a few struggles here and there, but hey, that's it's not like you're gonna have a perfect race every week. So it's and to the race side of it, I can't really look at it as a different style race. It's still going there to win. But on the other hand, I'll definitely answer any question he has, or heck, even I'll go down there and ask him a question or anything. It's kind of a mutual thing for sure.
Well, talk a little bit about just in general your season so far. I mean, you've really had a good opportunity to learn quite a bit, and I know that you've got some plans for the future. But talk about your 2014 season and kind of what you've learned that you can bring to your brother as he gets ready to make his debut.
Well, for Salem, it's going to be a little different because they just repaved 3 and 4, and that was definitely the tricky part around that racetrack. So, we're actually both going to be learning at the same time. Maybe after practice or something, I'll go down there and talk to him, or he'll come down and talk to me or whatever, and just kind of share info, and maybe we can combine information and definitely learn something for sure.
Hey, Kyle, it's Kyle Magda here. A few questions for you. My first one is, you're with the Rulo Brothers this season. Have you noticed any differences compared to with the Rulo Brothers this season than what you were with fast track racing last year?
Not much. It's basically the same thing I did last year. Because last year was my first season in ARCA, so just basically learning a new team, just like I did last year for sure. So we haven't had finished to just show that we did as good as last year, but we're getting better. We had one fourth place finish at Berlin, so that was a decent run, and we're slowly progressing. So it's just a little bit at a time, and then eventually put it all together, and hopefully we can have a victory. That's the goal, and then you keep on digging.
Yeah, when you looked over all your options, what made you decide to work with Rulo Brothers and then sign a developmental deal with Roush Fenway Racing?
The Roush Fenway Racing deal was developed first, and then basically like their development programs through Rulo Brothers. So after we got that deal set at Roush, then we went over here and started talking to them and everything, and then eventually had a deal put together, and now we're building on it and getting ready for. I think I have next year and then the year after that is going to be my full season. So, preparing for that, even now we're preparing for it, just getting every track I can go to, getting experience there, and then hopefully by the time we're ready for our full season, hopefully we can go there and get a championship for sure.
Yeah, and earlier in the season, of course, you had Kyle Benjamin, your teammate at the time. I mean, did you guys talk at all or share any sentiments when you guys were on the racetrack?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we ran 2 or 3 races together. But it's just like me and my brother for sure. Share information. I normally like to have a pretty good relationship between my teammates or for say my brother, just for that nature, and just getting information is definitely key.
Yeah, Kyle, one more question for you. You just turned 17. Have you had any thoughts? And if you are you have any plans to run Kentucky next week?
We are. We're working on it for sure. Trying to get this covered first. But then if we can get that covered, we're for sure going to try to make it there. Get experience. Like I said, that's the main thing for sure. Getting my first time big track experience per se.
Kyle, talking about your situation with Roush Fenway Racing, Mark Martin obviously is becoming a part of that as a driver development coach. Have you had the opportunity to spend any or much time with Mark, and is that something that's part of the plan for you? Because it would seem like he would obviously be one heck of a mentor as you try and get to your next level, which I would suspect would probably be some nationwide races perhaps. And, of course, as your brother maybe comes up at some point and perhaps gets involved if he does well. But have you had any contact with Mark Martin at all? Is he or are there plans for that in the near future?
I have not yet. I've actually been really busy with this season. This is actually the busy season right now, actually. After Kentucky, obviously, it's wrapping up. But I've been in Chicago. That's where Rulo Brothers is based out of. So I've spent probably 2 or 3 months up here for sure. And my home's pretty close here, so I've been back there for my birthday and everything. But other than that, after the season wraps up here, I head back to North Carolina for a little bit, and hopefully then we can get some contact and eventually start building on that, and then go on from there.
Kyle, I know one of the things that's been brought up over the last couple of weeks, especially with the way you've started your development path in 2000, has been the fact that you're basically following almost the exact same path that Chris Buescher did before you with the Rulo Brothers team. And I know, at least from my understanding, that you and Chris have had some interaction over the past year or so. What's that relationship been like, and have you been able to learn anything from him and from some of his past experiences with the team as you've worked with them so far in 2014?
Absolutely. Normally before every race, I call him. Just talk to him because, like you said, he's been through it all for sure. He's been at every track. He knows every little bump, every little characteristic of the track. So it's me and him are actually pretty close. So it's he's definitely one of the key people in my career that's definitely helped out a good bit. Obviously there's a ton of others, but I definitely give him a lot of credit for helping out and just building what I need to know for each racetrack and each weekend.
And it's certainly built a lot here for 2014, Kyle. Really quickly, 2015's on the horizon now for you. You'll be turning 18 during the season. What's that starting to shape up like for you? Is there anything that you can tell us as far as what you might be doing next season?
Well, unfortunately, basically the same deal we had this year. Adding Kentucky and I believe it's Pocono that whenever you turn 17 or last. Just those 2 races will be hopefully added to my schedule next year, and then obviously all the short tracks that we did this year. And then obviously whenever I'm 18, hopefully we can get the full season in and see what we got there.
I know that's what you're looking for. So before we let you go, Kyle, I know you can't do it by yourself. Real quick, give some shout-outs. Who makes it happen for you?
Definitely my mom. my dad, all of them. Without them, I couldn't. I definitely wouldn't be here for sure. Then my brother, he helps me out a good bit with any questions or anything I have. My sister, and then obviously the Rulo brothers, Rushman Racing, all of them. Brian Main, Michael Harper. I can't even name them all. There's a handful of people that's helped me out, and I got to thank all of them. It's without any of them, I wouldn't be here. So I appreciate all of them helping, and hopefully someday I can pay it off and have them behind me and everything for sure.
And I know we always appreciate you taking a few minutes to come on and talk with us, Kyle. Good luck the rest of this season. Good luck this weekend at Salem. And I'll have to say, we've got Clayton coming up here next. And if anything, from what we've heard from you, he's going to have a pretty tough act to follow. So maybe give him some words of wisdom during the break, and we'll see what we can't shake out of him. But appreciate the time again, and best of luck this weekend.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and anytime. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
We are going to take a caution flag here at the top of the hour on Motorsports Madness, and as we just alluded to, Kyle's younger brother, Clayton, who makes his ARCA Racing Series debut this weekend at Salem, on the air to talk live with us. Coming up next, you are listening to Motorsports Madness on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. We'll be right back.
The odds of a young girl being discovered by an industry insider while singing to herself pumping gas? 1 in 300 million. The odds of the daughter of a clergyman from Severn, Maryland spending 11 weeks at number 1 on the U.S. singles charts? 1 in 19 million. The odds of going on to win 6 Grammy Awards? 1 in 1.4 million. The odds of selling over 40 million records? 1 in 800,000. The odds of this musician and performer having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 110. I'm Toni Braxton, and I encourage you to learn the signs of autism at autismspeaks.org. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference. Autism Speaks. It's time to listen. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, along with our cast of characters around tonight's round table. And with one brother, we thought it only prudent to follow with the other half of this brother act. So from Kyle, we moved to Clayton Weatherman, now joining us on the Race Chaser hotline for tonight's episode of Motorsports Madness. And Tom, I'll tell you, this scenario, Kyle said before the break, it's been very interesting to see how it started to play out, and even the banter these two were talking during the break. It's each one of them wants to finish ahead of the other, and for Clayton, it's all about learning a whole new car this weekend, but at the same time, he knows his brother's out there, and he's going to be thinking about it, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like we talked about with the Mannings, or any of the other situations where we've had one brother against another. We do see it a lot in the shorter tracks, the lower levels of racing, where you you have multiple drivers in the same family who sometimes compete against each other. And sometimes a brother and brother, sometimes a brother and sister. It can be a mother and daughter, or father and daughter, that kind of thing. You see a lot of that. The lower levels, not so much when you get up to this level. Obviously, the Bush brothers. There have been some over the years, the Labonis, the Greens, like that. But neat to see this, and I'd like to go ahead and just bring Clayton right on the air with us and talk with him a little bit. First of all, Clayton Weatherman, welcome to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. We're really happy to have you on the program, and congratulations on a big opportunity for you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be on.
Talk a little bit about how this all came about for you.
Me and my brother, I was 6 and he was 9, and my dad was race go-karts, and then my dad's real good friend named Brian Main got us started in go-karts. And then Ken Main, David Reagan's dad, got us started in bandoleros, and then me and my brother have always liked it since we got started, and we just kept making our way up, and now we're both in the ARCA series.
I know it's been interesting for you, Clayton, and really this is the first chance that the two of you have had to race against each other since you were both in Legend cars, and we saw how much success both of you had at Charlotte, the Summer Shootout Series, over the years, but this weekend going to be a whole different animal for you. What's it going to be like for you? How much for you this weekend is going to be about just learning the car and learning how it reacts, because I know it's so much different than anything you've ever raced before.
Yeah, this car is completely different than anything I've ran, so, you got to, every lap you learn something new each lap, and you just keep learning and learning. You do the best you can. You definitely want to beat my brother, but then we're definitely going to just try to do the best we can and get the best finish out of it.
I know the big thing for you that's been talked about so far is not tearing up the equipment. You got the chance to test at Salem yesterday. What was your impression of the racetrack, and what do you think you learned out of that test session to help you for this weekend?
I learned quite a bit. We got a little bit better as we went on. We learned more car control, learned the track more, have better handle of the car now. We know what the car is going to do at certain spots of a racetrack, because the track changes so much. It's a very rough track. If you don't hit your line just right, you will wash up, or you might get a little loose. So you got to pretty much hit your line every lap, otherwise you're going to mess up.
And I know Salem, just a very tough track. 3 and 4 recently repaved. So it's not really learning anything different for you because you didn't race the track before the repave. But what did turns 3 and 4 over there with the new asphalt feel like from your vantage point behind the wheel?
It's extremely smooth. 3 and 4 is probably the smoothest part I've ever been on at any track. But then you get down in 1 and 2, and it's just extremely rough.
And I know that's one of the things that ARCA always talks about is how rough Salem is, and that's why so many drivers like it, is because it provides for some really great racing. But going ahead to this weekend, not only do you get to race against your brother, you also get to race against guys like Grant Enfinger, Frank Kimmel, some of these guys who I know have been guys that both you and your brother have looked up to since you were little kids, and guys that I know you're going to be learning from over the course of the weekend. What does that mean to you to know that now your career has gotten to a point where you're racing with arguably some of your heroes?
Yeah, it means quite a bit. Like, we had Will Kimmel there at the test with us yesterday, and he helped us quite a bit. He took me around the track in the rental car, and he showed me the line, and then Bill Kimmel helped us around a lot, and he helped us with our setup. He got us a little bit faster. It means a lot to people out there like Grant, Kyle Benjamin, Frank Kimmel, and all to be there. And, we'd love to beat them, and we're definitely going to try our best to beat them. So,
what do you think for you? I know the team probably has talked about it some, but for you for this weekend, what do you set as reasonable expectations for yourself going into this weekend? Because there are so many unknowns about this race and a lot of learning that you have to do.
Hey, my first goal is just learn as much as possible. And the next goal is get the best finish we can. Before the test, I didn't quite know what we had. Then we went to the test, and we were pretty fast, and I think we can get, if we keep our car together, don't get anybody, no damage, I think we can get a top 5 out of it.
I'm rather impressed. I didn't quite expect to hear that kind of a number out of you, but I know from hearing you talk last night after the test session that you guys did find a lot of speed in that car, and I know you, for one, were very, very impressed with what you guys found during that test session, and this weekend's so big for you. We've talked about it. It's coming up on Saturday and Sunday, but for you, I know a lot has gone into this, and you can't do it by yourself, Clayton, so I want you to be able to give some shout-outs. Who makes it happen?
You know, definitely my dad. He's the biggest thing, and then we got Michael Harper. He does the setup at the shop. I help him out some when I'm there, and then we got Lee Keach, United Nissan, Cashback, my dad, and, you know, my mom and my sister and my brother are all there to support me. Without them, I would definitely not be here. And then Brian Main, he does a lot. He got us started. Ken Main. There's a lot of people that have helped us to get here, and I can't thank them enough.
And I know very, very interesting and exciting times for you going into this weekend. I've watched you ever since you started at the summer shootout, and now seeing you make your ARCA debut this weekend, Clayton, it's going to be fun to watch. And any impressions as to whether you're going to be able to beat Kyle? I know you talked a little bit about what's it going to take, but you think you'll be able to pull it off?
You know, it's going to be extremely tough. My brother's definitely very good here. He almost had a win here in a 4th, and I think it was a 12th. He's done extremely good here. He's really fast here. I mean, if we keep our car together, stay up front, stay out of the wrecks, I think we'll be able to beat him. But if not, it'll be pretty close.
All right, Clayton, we really appreciate you taking some time to come on here and talk with us tonight. Wish you the best of luck this weekend, and looking forward to seeing what you can do in that ARCA car. Glad to have you on tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
We are going to take another commercial break, but we've still got a lot more. We're going back to the dirt when we come back to Motorsports Madness. Going to pull DJ Everett back out of pit lane and talk some World of Outlaws STP sprint cars. That's after these words. You are listening to Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. We'll be right back.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit StockCarSteel.com or SRI-Supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
For every turn, a twist. For every start, an untimely finish. For every win, someone who loses it. For every number, a nation. For every celebration, a brawl. For every split second, years of work. For every heaven, a hell. For every good old boy, a good old girl. For every curse, a prayer. For every ounce of order, a jug of chaos. For every twist, there's a turn.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker around tonight's round table, and we are going open wheeling with DJ Everett as we return to the dirt and talk some World of Outlaws STP Sprint Cars action. And DJ, this is the West Coast. This is your turf, your territory. The Outlaws down in California for the Gold Cup, one of the events that's very, very, very close to your heart. And I'll tell you, for everything we expected in California this weekend, the box score shows everything but what we expected.
You know, I tell you what, Jacob, in years past, we've talked about the Outlaws and how much trouble they have with Pennsylvania Posse when they roll through Pennsylvania. But let me tell you something. As of the last few years, the Outlaws have now had to deal with the Northern California Ninjas. It's been a tough go for the Outlaws anytime they get into the Northern California area, and that was, you know, proof of it was this past weekend. Friday night at Silver Dollar Raceway, opening the night with the Gold Cup. A young second-generation driver for Tommy Charlton Racing, Carson Macedo, winning his first ever World of Outlaw main event on Friday night. And, you know, let me tell you something. In that top five, we had a few other California drivers. Bobby McMahon, brother of Paul McMahon, who was sticking around locally in Northern California, finished third. Kyle Hurst finishing fifth. So that was Friday night. Saturday night, for the big run for the big money, another California driver, Jonathan Allard. Jonathan Allard is a former track champion at Silver Dollar Raceway, so no surprise there, but he also beat out the Outlaws once again. Jonathan Allard picking up the win. Third place was Sean Becker, who is the current points leader at Silver Dollar Raceway in wing sprint car racing. And Kyle Hurst also finished fourth. So the California guys having their way at Silver Dollar Raceway Friday night and Saturday night. We moved to Antioch Raceway in Northern California on Sunday, and the California drivers almost went 3 for 3 on the World of Outlaws. And, Jacob, I'm sure you've heard this. It was a photo finish, closest finish ever in World of Outlaws history between Kerry Madsen and Kyle Hurst. I think the margin of victory,
1/1000th of a second.
Kyle Hurst almost got Kerry Madsen at the line, but Kerry Madsen got him by millimeters. So California drivers almost went 3 for 3 in Northern California during the Outlaws swing through Northern California.
And let's make it a point to mention here, DJ, and you can offer some insight because you've been involved with sprint cars a long time. That comes down to not necessarily even the front nose wing, perhaps, but it all comes down to where the transponder is placed on those race cars. You put them at the front or possibly at the back, and depending on where they have them, and of course it's universal for the entire meet, but that can play an effect on the outcome, and basically what it comes down to is Kerry Madsen got really lucky.
He sure did. Kyle Hurst was coming in a big way. Madsen actually grabbed the lead from Darren Pittman early on the race, and then when Madsen started hitting traffic, California driver Kyle Hurst was coming hard and just missed out by 5/1000ths of a second. Closest finish ever in World of Outlaw history in Antioch, California.
It's beautiful. Johnny Gibson was almost speechless, and I don't think that's ever happened in I don't know how many years of the Outlaws. It's been a long time that Gibson's been a part of that, and I think listening to the audio and the highlights from Sunday night in Antioch, DJ, I've never heard Johnny speechless. I think that's about as close as I've ever come to hearing him even not have words for an Outlaws finish. It was just remarkable to watch.
Yeah, it sure was. I mean, basically I was speechless as well, and you've known me for quite some time, Jacob. I'm never speechless. But
no, you're not
this
speechless.
This past weekend was definitely, I was speechless in so many ways over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night.
Yeah, and you were speechless before last weekend too, and actually I think made your wife a little bit speechless because you set the bar pretty high. For those who don't know, you moonlight as a race car driver in your free time, believe it or not. And from what I understand, you went out to Meridian Speedway on the pavement quarter mile and won in your wife's car.
Yeah, we have two cars. So I've got my own. And my wife just breaking into racing this year as well. She's never raced before, ever. And she's been taking on the quarter-mile oval at Meridian Speedway here in Idaho for the first time ever this year. And so she has her own car. But my car this year has been having some problems. So I jumped in her car and was actually fortunate enough to put it in victory lane, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before. So, I set the bar high for her, but I bow my head and say, you know what, her car is actually faster than mine right now.
Ooh, and you're the one that's paid the money on both of them, so I can sense where this might be going.
Yeah, and the thing about that, that's funny about that race, Jacob, is that in that division of racing, we can actually race in the rain or in the dry. And there was, by the time our main event came up, there was a storm that came through Meridian, Idaho, and they said, rain or no rain, we're going to go racing. So that race was actually ran in the rain, and I was actually fortunate enough to put it in victory lane. So now the nickname that's been rolling through the pit area at Meridian Speedway is now Rain Man.
Oh, geez, that's the last thing we need from you, Tom. See, Tom, that's the cool thing about this, though. DJ can do something that NASCAR drivers can't. He can win in the rain.
Well, I don't know about they can't win in the rain. They can't race in the rain. Who was it? Was it Carl Edwards that won in the rain there a year or two ago over in Canada?
Oh, gosh. I think it was Edwards, actually.
I think it's hilarious that you say the DJ put up all the money for both cars. Everyone knows that what's his is hers and what's hers is hers. So it's really actually her money, and he should just be thankful that she allows him to actually race with her. So if she wins once in a while, I think that's turnabout as fair play.
I don't know, DJ. Is that how that works around there?
Well, that's how she kind of sees it. But I will tell you, Jacob, her car is a fast car. It's a beast, and I was happy with it that night. I was putting up some lap time. I've never ran around Meridian Speedway ever that fast before, and I was putting up the fastest lap times I've ever done at Meridian Speedway in her car, mind you. So, yeah, her car is a beast right now, so she's got herself a good machine.
And I know we've talked about learning with the Weatherman boys, and that's what Linda's trying to do as well. Thinking about it, though, we've not gotten a chance to talk about some of the West Coast news and notes for a while, but you've got a couple of races that you're going to be hitting, and I know feeding us some information while you're at it. King of the West Sprint cars are back in action this weekend, Santa Maria and Ventura, if my notes are correct.
I sure am. I'm taking a break from announcing and racing this weekend. I'm actually going to go be a spectator racing and watching, of course, as you guys will know, my favorite form of racing, dirt track sprint car racing, and King of the West Sprint Car Racing, a California Wing 410 division. I guess you can say it's the equivalent to the World of Outlaws, but they just stay local in California. And they'll be making their trip down this coming Friday to Central California at the 3/8 mile oval at Santa Maria Speedway in Santa Maria, California. And then Saturday night, for the very first time ever, at Ventura Raceway, Wing 410 sprint cars. Now, USAC CRA, which are non-Wing 410 sprint cars, have ran there many times in years past. For the first time ever at the quarter-mile dirt oval at Ventura Raceway, Wing 410 sprint cars. And when I saw that was going to be on the schedule this year for the King of the West, I said, I have got to make that race. And I will be sending you guys pictures of that racetrack. I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen pictures of that racetrack, but that racetrack is actually literally on the beach. You can walk from the grandstand about 50 yards, and you're on the beach of the Pacific Ocean. So looking forward to that this weekend.
Tom might hate me for saying this, but I need to pack my bags and fly out to California if that's the case. Well,
I don't hate you for saying it. I just, you everything in life is about choices, and I love the idea of the beach and the ocean. Not so sure I much care for the fly and the California part.
All right, fine, I'll give you that. And actually, that brings up some interesting points, because I would make the trip if I weren't tied up with DJ's original favorite sprint car series. USCS headed to Tennessee this weekend, and I know that DJ, of course, he tries to say he doesn't, but he still keeps one eye on the 360 scene over here because it's dirt sprint cars, and we all know DJ loves dirt sprint cars.
That is true. You get me paid, Jacob.
Speaking of dirt sprint cars, real quick, DJ, how about Damian Gardner? You brought up the USAC CRA series, the Demon. Any comments on Damian? He's just kept rolling and actually won at Santa Maria over the weekend as the USAC CRA series rolled through California as well, along with the Outlaws. 10 wins on the season in that series, and he's got to be pretty close to wrapping up the championship.
Yeah, Damian Gardner, of course, he started on the West Coast. Actually, he's a Northern California guy. Speaking of Northern California drivers, he's a Northern California guy, started in wing sprint car racing and eventually went non-wing in Southern California. And then he decided to try to tackle the USAC National Sprint Car Tour. He moved back to Indiana for a few years and tried to do that. Unfortunately, things didn't work out with car owners and sponsors, so he came back home to California. And I tell you what, he's been on a tear ever since he's been back home. 10 wins on the season. He's got himself, I think, close to a 150-point lead right now over everybody else in that division of racing. So I think with looking at the schedule here, with about 5 races left, if Damian Gardner doesn't have any problems, he's got pretty much a lock on the championship. But yeah, 10 wins on the season for Damian Gardner in the USAC CRA Sprint Car Series. And speaking of Damian, as you well know, Jacob, last year he tried to go to Bonneville to set the land speed record in a sprint car, just a little bit shy of 200 miles an hour. This week, he's back at it again. And today they tried making a run. He went a little over 190 miles an hour. They're going to try it again tomorrow to see if he can top that magic number of 200 miles an hour in a sprint car at Bonneville Salt Flats. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as well.
Yes, we will. And always fun to have you on as our West Coast correspondent, DJ. It's been fun to catch back up. We appreciate the insight. And, of course, with sprint car news this weekend, hopefully we can snag you for a couple minutes next Monday night and see if we can't wrap up the King of the West.
There you go. If I'm still not stuck on the beach down there in Ventura, California, I'll come back home to Idaho here, and join you guys.
Hey,
We'd certainly be looking forward to it, DJ. Bring some of the sand with you while you're at it.
Bring the sand and some of my hot air with it too.
Yeah, because we know how much you like to talk. We're going to take our bottom of the hour commercial break right here. Stay tuned. More of the madness coming up right after this. We've got a new round of Not Until the Press Release with James Pike, and we'll get ready to welcome Ryan Blaney to the cast as well. When we come back, you are listening to Motorsports Madness on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Stay with us.
Race Chaser Online and Speed77 Radio has gone live. All 3 of the Race Chaser Online Speed77 Radio branded podcasts can now be found live on blogtalkradio.com. Look for Motorsports Madness Monday nights at 7 p.m., hosted by Jacob Seelman and Tom Baker, along with all of their cast of characters, covering everything from NASCAR, IndyCar, F1, Super Dirt Car Series Modified, World of Outlaws, Sprint Cars, V8 Supercars, and everything in between. That's Motorsports Madness, Monday nights at 7 p.m. Then on Tuesday nights, it's time to talk New York Dirt with Turn 5 Live, hosted by Steve Ovens, Clint Miller, and Brad Ovens. They talk everything from the local scene in the Finger Lakes to the national dirt racing news. That's Turn 5 Live, Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. on blogtalkradio.com/Turn5Live. Then on Thursday nights, it's time to go full fendered action with the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, Thursday nights at 7 p.m., hosted by Tom Baker, Jacob Seelman, and Kyle Souza. That's the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Go to blogtalkradio.com/RaceChaserOnline, and for all of the news, views, and driver interviews, go to www.racechaseronline.com.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed 77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and welcoming back to the main seat at the round table, James Pike, as we roll into a double-edged segment before we get ready to go into our white flag segment coming up here in about 10 to 12 minutes. Pikester, we've got two things for you. Not until the press release, which is one of your favorite things, and V8 Supercars, which is your other favorite thing. So I want to start with the press release portion, or the lack thereof so far, because it's a story that we talked about in our last segment, and that was Marcus Ambrose leaving to head back to Australia, which coincidentally does tie into V8 Supercars because we're just good like that. So it's still not been officially announced, but everybody's still of the overwhelming majority opinion that Marcus is headed home, leaving the 9-car open for 2015, and we've been having some interesting conversation over the last 48 hours as to who might fill that seat. I'm going to throw a interesting name out here for you. We know the 9's a Ford team for next year. How about a Penske partnership and Sam Hornish Jr. going to the 9-car for 2015? We know Roger's got a soft spot for old Sam.
Yeah, Roger's got a soft spot for Sam, and there have been a few rides that have come up that have been filled up for next season over the course of this year that I've heard more than a few people say that Sam Hornish should have had a crack at. So if in the event he ended up in that seat of the 9-car, I wouldn't be shocked. That might be one of the best options I would be able to pull out of their department and their stable if they've got to keep it in-house. And to be honest, I think I'd like it. I'd like to see him get another crack at the Sprint Cup.
I would like to see Sam get another crack at it. He's been dangerously good in Kyle Busch's car every time he's gotten to run it this season in the Nationwide Series. So it's going to be fun to watch. And, you know, we're talking about it while we're thinking about it. This isn't necessarily a 2015 thought, but maybe more a 2016, not until the press release thought. But, you know, looking at maybe RPM taking a whole shake-up for 2015 and beyond, if they sell the idea to get Sam for 2015, Eric Almirola, I'm sure, has to start wondering about his seat. And, you know, if that team moves to a Penske partnership, there is a driver that's driving that 21 car next year who we're coincidentally talking to in a few minutes that would love to have a Cup seat full time.
Oh, no, I think everybody knows that Ryan Blaney would love to have a spot at 43 if he could get it. Of course, this is all not until the press release, but no, Ryan's done exceptionally well in the trucks. I think it's going to be a matter of when he gets a Cup ride. And to be honest, if it played out like that, I wouldn't be shocked.
No, I wouldn't be either. That's why we bring it up. Final thought of not until the press release, and it almost serves as a lead-in to the V8 Supercars as well, but you know, we talk about this all the time, how unpredictable things can be. V8 announcing just last week, I think it was, that they will be terminating, or have terminated, I guess would now be the correct wording, their contract with Circuit of the Americas, which leads to a cry of no from James.
Yes, it does, because it means that the V8 Supercars are not returning back to the States until 2016 at the earliest. And even then, it it doesn't seem likely that their focus is going to be on the Americas when they do put international events back in the calendar for the V8 Supercars. Sounds like it's probably going to be somewhere in Southeast Asia. That will be their first stop, maybe one of Sepang or Shanghai. I know they've been rumored. That being said, if they wanted to come to Laguna Seca, I would not have any problem with that in the slightest, Jacob.
Gee, I wonder where James wants to see the V8s come if they come back to America. While I'm thinking about it, last V8 thought, and then you can take over as we get ready to go to Sandown. If Marcus Ambrose comes back to V8 for 2015 and beyond, we know it's been rumored a Penske partnership, and obviously Roger would be looking to team up with somebody. Who is that, do you think, and why?
It is Dick Johnson Racing. A, because that's the team that's been talked about a lot, but B, because it makes a lot of sense. They are a Ford team. They're really the largest of the Ford teams that doesn't get any help already from the main factory team, Ford Performance Racing. They would love to have the money of somebody like Roger Penske and the experience of somebody like Roger Penske in their stable. And I think he'd like to jump at the opportunity to really make a name for himself in V8 cars and not just jump onto one of the big boys. So
it's going to be very fun. All right, I'll turn this over to you for V8 Supercars now, James, and we can go back and forth on this. But I know the Sandown 500, the next event on the schedule, this one is a very, very special one. The 50th anniversary of the inaugural Sandown Endurance Classic in 1964. Ralph Sack and Roberto Busanello won that day. Now, 50 years later, we're back at Sandown again. So who are the favorites, and who do you expect to see hoisting the winner's hardware at the end of this one?
Well, that's before we get to the fact that it's also the first race in the PureTech Endurance Cup. Translation for those of you that don't follow the series, you have the three biggest races of the season in succession. At the latter end of the season, it plays a huge part in the way the championship plays out because these races are, in effect, double points. And you also have co-drivers for the next three events, four races, if you're doing the math. So it throws a little bit of a wrinkle into things. As for favorites, we only got the Sandown 500 proper back in 2012. There were a lot of promoter issues at the circuit in the 2000s, and that saw this race move to a super sprint format. But in the 2 seasons that we've had it back as part of the endurance portion of the calendar, we've had 2 guys from Red Bull Racing win the event. Craig Lowndes in 2012, Jamie Whincup in 2013. So you have to figure that those 2 are probably going to be the favorites in Vegas or wherever they bet in Australia going into the weekend. Besides them, I think you have to look at the 2 teams that have finished second and third on average in those 2 years respectively, and those would be Ford Performance Racing and the Holden Racing team. No shocker there, really. They've got a bunch of money and they've got a bunch of talent, too, with Mark Winterbottom, Chaz Mostert, James Courtney, Garth Sanders. So one of those 4, I think, is likely to unseat one of the Red Bull guys. If that happens, that being said, I'm not so sure that will happen. I think the more interesting thing that you can look at is who might jump up and make a statement for themselves this weekend. And there are 3 teams that I look at in particular. One is Erebus Motorsport. They posted a season's best finish of 4th last year at this event with Lee Holdsworth. They've been markedly better this season than they were last season. If they continue on that upswing, they might be in for the win with a little bit more than a shout. And I have to figure that they're throwing a bunch of resources into this race just because they did so well here last year, and it was because they were quick, not just because they lucked into it. Also on the list of guys that I'm watching is going to be one Nick Percat. And for those of you who've been following the series, Nick was a co-driver with Garth Sander at HRT for the past couple of seasons, won the Brett Bathurst 1000 in 2011 behind the wheel of that 2 machine. Now he's got his own ride with Walkinshaw Racing. He's finished in the top 10 of 6 of the past 10 races leading up to this event. And, oh, by the way, he snagged his first podium as an individual driver in the last event out at Sydney Motorsport Park, finishing second behind Scott McLaughlin. And it would not shock me in the slightest. It might not be here. I feel like it probably will be more at Bathurst than anywhere else. But if he jumps out and shocks somebody and pulls off a podium finish or maybe even a win in one of these races, not to say that he's due, but all signs indicate that that might happen. And maybe will. We'll see how it plays out.
And oh, by the way, Nick Percat's birthday, James, is on race day on for Sandown 500. So a heck of a birthday present if he could pull it off.
Birthday present, and he's got the very experienced Oliver Gavin as his co-driver, and I like that pairing a lot. That puts a lot of experience in a guy who has raced all sorts of different cars across his career, alongside a relatively younger but nonetheless still experienced guy in Percat. So I like the look of that team. I think they've set up things very, very well for this event and for the Enduros, and I will be looking to see something big out of them. And then, Jacob, there's also the small matter of one driver that you love a lot, and one Scott McLaughlin in that 33 Volvo.
Yes, and Scotty's going to be very fun. Alexander Premat going to be his co-driver, and I'd say if Nick Perkhead's due, Scotty McLaughlin is equally due. He's been fast, been close a couple of times, and James, I think maybe the endurance format is his time to shine. I think these longer races where he can pace himself and then show the speed when it counts, I think that could be a really big key to Scotty having a strong run.
I think, Jacob, the biggest issue for that whole team, both him and Robert Dahlgren in the pair of Volvos run by Gary Rogers, is going to be mechanical reliability. They have been quick many times over the course of the season, but mechanical issues have caught them out in some of the races where they've had pace. Did it last time out at City Motorsport Park, for instance. So if those cars can hold together, I think Scotty and the crew have the pace. It's just a matter of whether or not they stay together.
And that's exactly the key. Final point that I look at for this weekend is the fact that we just talked about Scotty McLaughlin, Volvo returning for the first time in 20 years to Sandown, but even more importantly, Craig Lowndes potentially tying Peter Brock's record of 9 wins at the Sandown 500. Of course, Brock won all 9 of his races at Sandown. Lowndes has won 8 times across the 3 different venues that have run this race, Sandown, Queensland, and Phillip Island. But still, it's been the same event for 50 years, and Lowndes going for history this weekend.
Yeah, and anybody like Craig Lowndes, when you've been in the business as long as he's been in the business, I know Craig's got a ton of respect for the late, great Peter Brock. He is, in essence, the Dale Earnhardt of Australian motorsport, most decorated driver in the history of Australian touring cars. And that would be one notch in Craig Lowndes' belt that he would love to have. And I know that he'd pay all sorts of respect to Brock, and to be honest, it'd be due.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. And, of course, through this whole thing, we've not even mentioned Jamie Whincup, and you can't go in a V8 supercar race and not think that Jamie Whincup's going to have a chance. So it's going to be fun to see how it shakes out, Pikester, and I have a gut feeling that you will be intently staring at your computer screen at all hours of the Eastern Time night, as will I, as much as I can this weekend between racing, to keep an eye on what's going on.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, if you log on to the V8 Supercars website, pay $15, you get live streaming access to all 3 of the endurance weekends, and you get DVR capability, so you don't have to be me. You can wake up in the morning and watch it when you actually have a little bit of energy in you, too. So if you want to see the best of what the V8 Supercars has to offer, I highly recommend taking up that offer. It's a great deal, and you'll see some great racing over the next month and a half.
An eye on James, and we're going to go to our final commercial break tonight. When we come back, we've got a lightning round up ahead, but we also talk to Penske Racing and Brad Keselowski Racing superstar Ryan Blaney, as he's coming off big wins in both the Nationwide and Camping World Truck Series of late. So we'll have that live interview and get ready to wrap up tonight's episode of Motorsports Madness when we come back. You're listening to Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Stay with us.
All I wanted to do was just pick up a guitar and sing praise songs.
From IamSecond.com.
Well, when I got to 17, I was playing in after-hours bars, just in a bunch of trouble.
Grammy Award winner Michael W. Smith.
Smoking that first joint and feeling so guilty about it. From there, it was LSD, and your compass sort of just like disappeared. I knew where I belonged. I just couldn't get out. I was very depressed. I went on the floor and just began to shake. And I was just weeping. I was weeping. And I just began to just cry out for God. 12:30 at night, on the linoleum floor of my kitchen, the God of the universe came and wept with me on that floor. I know where my hope lies. It's not being a rock star. I'm a son of the High King of the Universe.
Watch Michael's story at IamSecond.com.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit StockCarSteel.com or SRI-Supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness on a Monday night here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Talking all kinds of racing here on the Madness tonight, and boy, we really have covered the gamut. I mean, that's been a great show. We've talked everything from NASCAR to open wheel, and of course, you know, Chicago is upcoming, Pikester. This is going to be a very interesting first chase race because given the way that Richmond was. The way that unfolded last weekend, it's going to be interesting to see if the drama ramps up at all going into Chicagoland, because I really would have thought the drama would have been in everybody basically half overdriving their cars trying to get in the chase, but now I think the drama has to ramp up because you've really got to get a win to ensure yourself getting to the second round of this thing.
Well, I don't think it will be too much harder for the race this weekend to be any more dramatic than the one we had last weekend, because there was about zero drama save for your donkey of the weekend at Richmond. And B, I think, honestly, even more important than winning the first race is just making sure you get out of the first race without any problems. In the I think we're on year 11 of the chase now. There has never been a champion who has had some sort of issue and has struggled in the first race in Chicago. Nobody that's had a DNF has made it, and there have been some guys that are just really, really slow for some reason or another and haven't been able to rebound. So I think, yes, it'd be nice if you win, but for everybody, just for the sake of momentum and that alone, you've got to make sure you have at least a decent finish so you can put yourself in a position in the next few weeks to actually go do something.
Yeah, it just I was just blown away by the Richmond race, to be honest, and I think this Chicago race has the chance to really be something special. I've got to bet that you're going to see an aggression level like we've never seen before in race 1 of the chase. And don't forget, we're going to focus most of our attention on the 16 chase drivers, and that's rightfully so. But you've got a number of other drivers who may or may not be auditioning for a job next year and who certainly want to go this season on a high note. So these last 10 races aren't just going to be give-me's for the chase drivers. You got some guys that really need to make a statement here before the end of the season, you know, with sponsors and whatever else. So I like this format. I like that we're going into Chicagoland talking about the importance of winning, and not just for the guys in the chase.
You know, you mentioned that, and there are two guys that come to my mind immediately off the top of my head. One is the Furniture Row Machine and Martin Truex Jr. He got forced out of his ride at Michael Waltrip Racing in unfortunate circumstances, which I don't necessarily know if I would still pin them directly on him so much as it was on Ty Norris and the higher-ups in that team to make the spin gate call. But nevertheless, he moved to Furnace Row in the offseason. And given the way they performed with Kurt Busch last year, I think we all expected a little bit more from them than we had this year. But it just kind of seems like they haven't done much of anything, really. It almost feels like the blown engine at Daytona set the tone for their entire season, and they just haven't really ramped it up since. And then beyond that, obviously one guy that I always have my eye on for obvious reasons, but I really could use a win, if nothing else, to preserve his streak of winning a race every single season he's been driving in the Sprint Cup Series full time, as Tony Stewart. Missed the chase, although probably wasn't going to make it anyway, has not been performing well. But I think if he could get out of this season with a win, given the way it's gone and everything that's happened to him, I think that it would be a modest success at best. Jacob.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. A lot of storylines, and while we're talking about storylines, we've got a driver on the Race Chaser hotline right now who's basically been creating his own storylines the last couple of races, and glad to welcome him live for the first time to Motorsports Madness tonight. Of course, talking about Ryan Blaney, who has won his two most recent NASCAR National Series starts before this weekend at Richmond, at Bristol in the Nationwide Series, and Canadian Tire Motorsports Park in the Truck Series. Ryan, first off, really glad to welcome you to the program, but you've had an interesting 3 weeks or so going back and forth between the Nationwide car and the truck, and despite it all, it just seems like you've been on a roll, especially in that truck race. And I'll tell you, I think that made for one of the more memorable moments of the entire season, and I'd imagine it was a lot of fun for you as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you all for having me. It's good to be on the show for the first time. And yeah, it's been a very fun, few weeks here. Really, the past month and a half has been a blast, and announcing my deal for next year with the Wood Brothers, and then being able to win at Bristol in the Nationwide car, and being able to win at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park in the truck. It's been a lot of fun here, and we're making big gains on the truck side, and the Nationwide car has been very, very good too. So I'm excited to be pulling double duty at Chicago this weekend in both the Nationwide and the truck. So I'm excited to get out there and see what we can do. Hopefully we can get that points lead back over on the truck side and try to set sail on that deal.
Yeah, you're only 13 points back on the truck side now after the win. How much confidence did that triumph in Canada give you? And really, what's the emotion been like? Because you had that race in the palm of your hand for the last 10 laps, and then Quiroga gets by you in turn 8, and basically it just looked like you went for broke there in the final quarter and found a way for it to stick and ultimately get the win by just that much.
Yeah, we were able to get back under him on there, and that was a lot of fun racing with him there at the end. And we had a great race going, and it's great that we could both end it, in a clean fashion and not have any problems. And hopefully that was great for the fans. They've had great shows up there for the past couple of years. And it's just been fun to be a part of it.
It's been a lot of fun to watch. What kind of challenges is this weekend going to give you, Ryan, pulling double duty? It's not something we've really seen you do too much as of yet, but you've had no trouble going back and forth across the last couple of weekends in the Nationwide and the truck car. So I'd imagine it's going to be pretty fun for you just to have the additional track time at Chicago.
Yeah, it's always good when you can do double duty. You get a lot more track time, like you said, and that's just beneficial for any driver. And definitely being able to run the truck race the night before the Nationwide race, which I've already run the Nationwide race there earlier this year at Chicago, but you still just get to learn that much more about the racetrack and about how the track goes from day to night, and you just keep learning, and that's very beneficial for any driver. So very fortunate to be able to be in that position to where I can run double duty and with two great teams that I know we have a chance of winning. So I'm very excited to get on racetrack here this weekend at Chicago and see what we can do, like I said.
Yeah, I would imagine you are very excited, Ryan. And really, when you look back on this season, I mean, has this season been better than you expected going in? I mean, when I think back and look at where you are now, and even with the understanding that you already know you're going to be spending some time in the Cup Series next year, you're way ahead, I would think, of where you thought you might be at this time in terms of your next step and progression and all that. Are you a little blown away when you really think about where you're at this point in your career?
Well, I've been very fortunate to be able to have great opportunities. Being able to have a great team like Brad Keselowski Racing and being able to be with a great team like Team Penske, it's opened up a lot of doors. I'm very fortunate to have opportunities like that to where we can showcase what we can do. And, I think we're taking the right steps and moving along right at pace. Honestly, we've had a few bad races in the trucks, and, that's taken a lot of points away, but I think we've been performing very well over there. So, honestly, you always want to be better. You always want to be better at this point in the season, have the points lead and have it by 100 points, but you run into issues, and we just got to learn to minimize those issues both on truck and nationwide side. But to answer your question, I feel like we're right where we're at. I feel like we're right where we need to be.
Well, that's certainly that's. I think you're definitely where you need to be, and you got to be excited about the opportunity to go work with the Wood Brothers next year. I mean, it's an organization that really is. It feels to a lot of us like one of the founding organizations of NASCAR, if you will, and the opportunity to race for them and still to have that connection with Penske, that was really a case of the perfect situation at the perfect time for you.
It is. The Wood Brothers have been great to us, been great to me and to Penske. It's been great to get to know Leonard and Eddie and Len over there. They're such great guys. The history with that team is so amazing, and it's been great to get to know their stories and learn about them and learn about all the drivers that have run for them. And I'm just very, very fortunate to be there, and I think with this Penske Alliance, it's definitely going to put them at the next level.
I know that's one of the things, Ryan, I think that has been interesting for all of us to think about for 2015 is where Penske's at, it seems like, compared to where the Ford camp has been over the last couple of years, and I know you're excited about that. Are there any expectations really for you going into this Cup deal with the Woods for 15, or is it just about learning the differences between the Cup car and the nationwide car and seeing what you can go do with it?
Honestly, I think with our new Penske Alliance that we're going to have, how strong that they have been, I think we're honestly going to have chances to win races next year with the Wood Brothers. And I can really say that and believe in it. And like I said, with all the advancements we're going to get from Penske, it's definitely going to put them over the top to be competitive again, I think. And it's going to take me a little bit of time to get used to the car. There's so much different, and especially with the rule changes they're going to have here in the off season, it's going to be important to go testing and making sure that we that we're up to par and we're ready to go. So, I think it's going to be a lot of experience in the beginning, but I think we can get over that and we'll be able to really be competitive here, hopefully very soon.
And I know certainly being competitive is not something that you've had a problem with in 2014. Obviously had a lot of success chasing a Truck Series championship, like you said. What's it going to take over these final stretch of races for you guys to overcome this last 13 points and bring home a championship for BKR?
Just no mistakes. You can't make any mistakes, and especially when it gets down late in the season where you can't make those back up. Points, we don't get a reset in the Truck Series like Cup guys do. We don't have a chase. We have to be consistent all over the year. We've had some bad races, but everyone else has too, and then maybe we have one or two more bad races than Johnny or Matt, but that's where we're at, and like I said, just no mistakes and trying to minimize damage and not, whether it's on the pit crew side or driving side or make sure we don't have anything fall off the truck is going to be big. It's just all about being consistent, and I think that's what we're about this year. And the thing is, I think we have a lot of speed with that, so I think we can go out and win a bunch of these last races. We're kind of hitting our stride, and that win at Canada definitely really, really pumped the guys up, and they're ready to go. The first one's always the hardest one of the year, and I think after this we're ready to go, and we're really going to be a threat for the championship, I think.
And I know the success you guys have had this season, Ryan, wouldn't be possible without a lot of support, both on the truck side and the nationwide side. So real quickly, want to give you a chance to give some shout-outs. Who makes it happen for you and the whole operation over there at BKR and Gene Penske?
Well, Ford has been huge coming on board last year and really supporting us through this year. And you can see that. You can see the improvements in our organization. We're a title contending team, and that's a lot of props to Ford for letting us be able to do this and then be a part of our program and supporting us so much. And that aren't really familiar with the Truck Series. They've been out of it for a while. In 2013, last year was the first year they got back in it in about 5 or 6 years. So to show that commitment is really big, and then we thank them a lot. And Cooper Standard, our primary sponsor that's been on my truck all year, has been a big key role in all of Brad Keselowski racing. Cooper Standard's actually been with Brad since about 2011, I think, and they've been a huge supporter of me and my racing and Brad. So I got to thank them a lot, and Draw Tight Sequent Performance Products. They've been huge to us, and everyone on the Penske side, Discount Tire and Hertz, and just it's so many people. It's so many people and companies. It's hard to kind of narrow down, but those are the biggest ones, and we really want to thank them.
And certainly you've been doing a fine job thanking them on the racetrack as well with all the success you've had, Ryan. Again, appreciate you taking a few minutes tonight to call in and talk with us. Wish you all the best. Double duty for you this weekend at Chicagoland, and we'll keep an eye out to see if we're not seeing you in victory lane at least once over this weekend.
Okay, I hopefully we can get in there 2 times. That'd be a perfect world, wouldn't it? But thanks for having me on the show, and hopefully you can have me back on the air pretty soon celebrating a victory.
That's what we're looking forward to. Thanks, Ryan. And with that, really quickly, we're going to go back to our round table and talk picks in our green-white checker before we go off the air tonight. I'm going to go around the table real quick, 30 seconds or less. Tom Baker, you're first up. Who do you like and why?
Well, it's Chicagoland, and it's the first round of the chase, and you've got to win to advance, basically. So in those circumstances, I want somebody who's really, 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 really aggressive, and somebody who basically would run over their own mother to win a race. And, when you start getting into those kinds of races, I like Kevin Harvick.
Oh, boy. So Tom's going with Harvick. I mean, he's been good on the intermediate tracks, so I like that pick. Pikester, I know you've been kind of taking a page out of my book lately and looking at the numbers. Who do you like for this weekend at Chicago?
Going out on a little bit of a limb given his recent performances, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I was looking at the numbers, because I am looking at the numbers, and I'm looking at this guy. He likes candy, and he's also really aggressive, and he also likes to run over people, and sometimes he drops a few expletives every now and then, which isn't necessarily admirable, but who cares? I'll take Kyle Busch this weekend. Time for him to actually start a chase on a good note for once.
Well, all right. I like how you got there, James, albeit a little off the wall, but you're right. Kyle Busch does like candy, and he's very aggressive, so I'll take that bet. Kyle Magda, we'll go from talking about one Kyle to talking to a Kyle. Who do you like?
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting race this weekend with what's going to happen. Looking down at the field, I think right now you look at the guys who have momentum. So I think for this weekend, I think Jeff Gordon's going to take the win, because I think that team is on a roll right now. Them and the 2 car, they're pretty equal right now. So I'm probably going to go for Jeff Gordon. He's due for a win, and and just the success he's had this year has just been unbelievable. So hopefully he'll be one closer to the drive for 5.
All right, so Magda's got Jeff Gordon. I'm going to go to the other Ryan in our stable, Ryan O'Hara. Ryan, who do you like this weekend?
For this weekend, I'm going to take the 4 of Kevin Harvick. He's got a great mile-and-a-half program. Chicago's a track that he's had success at. Won the first 2 races at Chicagoland Speedway in 2001 and 2002. It's going to be a nose-to-nose battle. Hopefully, a good finish between the 4 and the 24. I think that's what it's going to come down to. It's either going to be Gordon beating Harvick or Harvick beating Gordon. But I think for the first race in the chase, I think Harvick's going to take the win. However, if he still continues to have problems with his pit crew, don't be surprised if it's Jeff Gordon in victory lane.
Oh boy, this is going to be fun. So we've got all that, and I think this is the first time that we've ever had two of our people agree on a pick, which is unbelievable because we never agree on anything. I'm going to go with, who am I going to go with? Who am I kidding? I look at numbers too, and I'm looking at a guy who is coming off a solid run. He is going into the chase with a little bit of momentum. He is also the 2012 winner of this race. Oh, by the way, it was the Chase opener then, too. And he went on to win the championship that year. I'm picking the Richmond King. Brad Keselowski goes to victory lane at Chicagoland. Tom, we've had a fun show here in the last 2 hours, and I'll tell you, we're getting ready to send it all the way home. Any final thoughts from you? I have enjoyed this immensely.
Oh, it's been a great show, and I say let's go racing and get this chase thing started already. We've worked a long time to get here. I want to see how this new format plays out with the elimination round starting. So as Joel likes to say, I think I can speak for all of us when I say that we just hope that wherever our listeners are and whatever tracks they're going to be going to this weekend, we hope that they will get out, see some racing, and enjoy what they're watching.
That is what we're hoping, and it's been a fun night. Want to thank Tom, as always, for joining us at the round table, and Pipester as well for helping us hold down the table. A special thanks to our guests tonight, to both Kyle and Clayton Weatherman, and, of course, to Ryan Blaney, who we just wrapped up with. And for Joel Sebastianelli, Steve Ovens, Ryan O'Hara, Kyle Magda, Ryan Kent, Joel Sebastianelli, and everybody that makes it happen here at Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. I'm Jacob Steelman. Race fans, keep it off the wall until we meet again, and we'll see you at the racetrack. So have a safe weekend, as Tom said, everybody, and we'll catch you on the airwaves Thursday for the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show at 7 p.m. Eastern. Good night, everybody.